a trend on fund balance. It shows a couple of things. It shows where we are with fund balance from June 30th, 2012 to estimated to June 30th, 2019. Again, June 30th, 18 is based on the draft of the audit and pending the final audit, and June 30th, 19 is based on what we budgeted to use of fund balance. The red line is the auditor recommendation of the 15% of expenditures. So you can see the trend in the total fund balance, and you can see where that recommendation, that line of recommendation of fund balance is. Just a couple things I would say. The benefit of having the fund balance is to help fund one-time items that may come up, such as the mold remediation that this board funded last year. The ramifications of continuing the trend and dipping below that red line, the recommended amount of fund balance would be ongoing cash flow issues and no allowance for the unexpected. So, okay.
Board members, in terms of questions, because this is a work session, this is really to make sure that we all understand what this, would it be of value to go through the slides, not necessarily individually, but have some degree of flow to this, because we don't want to get way out in front with the question that some people may need the basic information first. Does that make sense to any of you? In other words, start from the beginning, have that, let's just flip through see if anybody has any questions. Should be simple, and then that could eventually lead to a more extensive discussion. I'm not getting any feedback from anybody.
I don't have any questions, but I do have one request, Ms. Davis, and I know you work hard, but this will help me if it helps no one else. On slide number 27, when you talk about additional capital outlay funds, you was talking about how those monies were spent on different projects. I would love to have some of that in detail.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Okay, good. Is it okay we just kind of start going through this, or? All right, Beth, let's just do that and run through, and as we go through, we don't need to stop at every one of them, but if, you know, the first few, if anybody's got questions, you know, there may be some simple clarification questions. Board members, you just want to run through that and see if anybody's got any questions. We don't need to spend a lot of time.
So about the overall budget, or
Just going through the slides from the very beginning.
I do have one more
Sure.
fresh on my mind, but I may forget.
I understand that.
I think it was next to the last slide, we had the chart showing the decline or the decrease in using of the capital outlay fund. Can you give me a percentage of what it was by year? I just want to know that drop, because it gives you a futuristic look of how it will keep going on the percentage rate. You understand what I'm trying to ask?
right,
The graphs are
percentage
so
of expenditures.
that it drops every year by just a percentage.
Are you talking about the fund balance or capital outlay?
Capital outlay, the one at the end.
The one is fund. I think it's fund
I
balance.
think it's slide 38 for this
I think it's
reference.
about the last one. FEMA,
Fund
fund
balance
balance.
percentage. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Ms. Day, if you would, please, just kind of walk us through a little bit.
So to start with, we talked about the overall budget and what makes up that. So if there's any questions about that.
Okay. You can keep on trucking unless anybody has a question.
And then the history of the 955. So part, really the new thing was this, the plan to reduce the use of fund balance, that 2-year plan.
I have a question right there. On the HB 90 compliance teachers.
Okay.
First of all, I asked and never did get a firm answer about whether or not we were required to fund those as, I'm not questioning the value of it. I'm just asking whether or not the state mandated that we are required this to be funded, because I cannot imagine other counties in this state who would be able to afford that. So I would just like to know the answer to that question. I'm not saying that if they're valued, I mean, if as we move forward, we gotta look at some hard stuff, it would be nice to know.
Well, my understanding of not
It is
complying,
required?
with not complying with House Bill 90 is the superintendent's salary, and
I thought
the
there was a
state portion.
1-year exemption to that.
Now, I had to sign an affidavit, I believe twice last year.
Okay,
Ever so often, they, and that's the beauty of the link system. You gentlemen approved to speak between HR and finance. It allows to catch some of those nuances. And I mean, it catches everything, just one child over, we're out of compliance. So that is one I have to sign for twice a year.
okay. I just wanted,
But it's a great question because that was an expense for us.
yeah, major.
Mm-hmm.
A
Yeah.
big expense. And that's what she means
How
when she
do-
says
what do-
state mandated, that was state mandated.
Go
Go back to the one with the check marks.
Okay.
Just talk to, the 514 is part of the 955. Just talk about, would you speak to not generating or not going in the fund balance? What is the impact there? In other words, we're saying we need the 514, and then the additional funds that take us up to 955. So we would have to go into fund balance. So if we don't do that, what are the implications?
Well, it would depend on what the board decided to do as far as making cuts of 514. I mean, if you just look at teacher positions, and I don't know that you would, but if you looked at teacher positions, that would be 10 teacher positions.
And I think that's what's important to know. If we don't go into fund balance, we're gonna have to come, it's the old rob Peter to pay Paul. We're gonna have to come up with it from someplace.
That's right.
Prior to my arrival, when you gentlemen reached the 514 status, the decision was to cut. I mean, when you really look at all of those things that were cut, we want to be reminded, these cuts came after how many years of other cuts?
Yeah, many years.
So this wasn't as if you all just did a one-time, let's cut. You all have cut, we can look at the data, the past 4 or 5 years there have been cuts, and then immediately before my arrival. This was your latest plan, which in essence totaled $1,090,000, you know, and then we have to go in and make cuts, which brought it down to just 514. And then last year, we came back to you and we had the conversation about school resource officers, and social worker, Phoenix Academy, and the 3 clerical that could have been cut, and the 14 teachers that could have been cut. That's how you then get up to the 955, because we layered on top of that plan already.
But remember, we had, what was the fund, before we put in place the 3-year, whatever it was, how much were we taking out of fund balance a year? Using out of fund balance?
I
Over $1
mean,
million?
yes, this was 1.7 million, so we were at, this total plan was 1.7, so we would have been appropriating 1.7 million of fund balance, but it was above that.
So we were
Before the
appropriating
plan.
1.7 million. And we got it down to 514 was the plan. And then all of these other things came up and were added at the very last minute.
That was part of the board approved in June 2018.
But the point is that originally the fund balance that we were appropriating was 514. And that's what we said we were going to cut. And then last year, when we added additional positions and so forth, it went from 514 and jumped up to 955.
Well, the only point of clarification I would make to that is that it was not cutting positions. I mean, it was added to the amount of fund balance we use, but those were existing positions that we have that we did not cut.
And that's important because, again, the way the funding flows, it's about the children and not necessarily about where they are. And so when we did not cut those positions, we in essence were adding to the 514.
Well, this is like, what, the second or third budget cycle that we've talked about these numbers, and basically we've kind of kicked them down the road.
That's right.
Every other year.
Right.
And so every year it's, take this number, and then let's add what else we need to layer on top of it to get to operate where we typically are.
Where we're funded.
Yeah.
And I would add to that, that is not adding new initiatives per se, that is just maintaining the staff and the teachers that we currently have
That's-
based on the number of students.
Mr. Mims, that's a critically important observation. We'd love to have added people and positions and things last year, but really what we fought to do was to keep things we already had in place at various schools, just to keep them operating.
Well, I would say not only people, but I would say staff, because when you look at the number of hats individuals wear,
Yes, sir.
that can be detrimental in the long term.
I think the only thing that the saving grace from us and other industries is our people are innovative. We're paying over 50% of our budget to people, thank goodness that they're coming up with good ideas versus having to produce something off of no extra money.
Now, what we don't have here that we have to also keep in mind, you're exactly right about the people, and it's not like we just went off and created new, things without funding as the majority of this money. We did add options. Which kept some students here, and so you'll see a little increase over last year with number of students that came, and we hope to grow that even more as well. But we also kept all of our buildings operating. And that's another piece of the conversation. So it's the people, it's the facility, it's the programs, it's sort of all of those things. We talk about 21st century, you see, the plan was to cut laptops, laptop program, technology of staff. That ought to concern us. But that is what we had to do to get that down, because otherwise the reliance was over $1 million. So, no easy answers here.
But, it just brings absolutely to the center of our discussions, and it's cost. I mean, you can kill the messenger if you want to, but all of this stuff is great. It is fabulous. It is critically needed. But our enrollment is down. What are we paying, 16% to charter schools? We are down 20% or whatever it is, and we're still keeping positions that are so important. But at the end of the day, with the 16% reduction, we either kick it down this next year or come to the reality that it's horrible, but that we have got to make appropriate moves. 16% decrease in enrollment. I mean, that's huge. And so the question then becomes, what do we do? How do we prioritize? How long can we keep doing this? Ms. Day, what is how much did we spend a few years ago on some major capital outlay requirements that weren't expected? Wasn't there something about 3 or 4 years ago that was a pretty big number?
So in that additional capital outlay funding, is that?
No, I'm talking about when we had some kind of a major break of HVAC or whatever it was, that when we had to come up with money to pay for it, local.
In 17-18, the mold remediation that we paid out.
And how much did we have to pay in local funds?
900?
Right at 900.
Yeah, 900K.
All right, if we had $2.5 million in fund balance, and we had to pay out $1 million just for that, that would leave us with $1.5 million. So, you see what I'm saying? I mean, you can shoot the messenger, but it's just, it's awful. It's awful, awful, awful. But we have to face reality. I mean, you know, we'd love to keep APs, assistant principals. We'd love to keep clerical staff. We'd love to keep other things. We need them. It isn't a question of whether or not we do it. It's, we need those positions, but we don't have the money. And how long can we keep kicking it down the road?
We've gotten there.
Huh?
We've gotten there, I think. As far as kicking it down the road, when we get through this budget year, there's not gonna be much road left to keep us.
Well, and I'm waiting to hear, Dr. McLean, about your ideas and innovations for out years. In other words, we don't want to just keep marking time. We want our school district to excel and improve. So we need to not continue to just do what we're doing. We need to do additional things, come up with new programs. So, and we need to find funding so you can be innovative.
And I'll tell you, I appreciate that, and you've said that multiple times, but it gets really difficult when you get to this place, because you all can't afford to give me that.
Right, you're right.
I'm just being very
Unfortunately.
honest. Unfortunately, you know, it's one of those things where it sounds so nice to say, and I really do appreciate you saying it, but you honestly can't afford to even give me those things if we continue to operate the manner in which we're operating. There are two types of resources you have at your fingertips. One is the human resources, and the other happens to be our capital resources. You cut all the human, I think you can cut. That's why we fought so hard to keep some more and add some more back this year. But as long as they're this spread out, it's very difficult to give children optimal educational experiences because the resources are so spread. We could have cut some secretarial positions if we didn't have as many individual buildings to run. I wouldn't have needed them all. Does that make sense? I would only need the clerical or the APs or the teachers for the facilities that are there. So based on what the state sends us, we have what we need. It's our decision to spread it all over the place. And then what you get into is equity and making sure every building has what every building has. So that's the crux of this matter, was just making sure, one, we were all understanding how we got here so that you all can really think through, now what is it we need to do to make sure we don't shortchange students in this process, and that we're able to give them all the resources they need. And right now, we know those resources are spread on how many campuses did we see in here?
20, 19,
17 campuses.
17 campuses, for how many children? That's the tough part for us. It's how many children are we trying to serve on all those campuses? You know, I could take high school alone, because that isn't a study, so that allows me just to paint a picture.
Sure.
If you look at some of our partners in local surrounding counties, how many students would you find on average in most high schools? Just on average.
1,200.
A little more. About 1,500, some
Really?
of 2,000, yeah. Yeah, you're gonna find, and the question is, why do you think that is? It's more economical. You get to keep your resources in one place, under one roof, and still get to serve more students.
Maybe hire more teachers or something.
You're able to do that. So we have the funding for the right number of personnel. What we're facing here is we're probably trying to serve too many campuses, and we're trying to do it equitably. If you get to the place where you don't have something on a particular campus, that very well is problematic for that school. So what the charge is in understanding the finances is making sure we do a really good job of balancing what we do get and what we do have and using it efficiently. The question is, what does that mean? I met with the retiree group last week and I asked, you know, well, what we said was, my heart goes out for my board, and it did with them too, because this is hard. Because it isn't about so much, not necessarily, well, it is about the funding, but it's making sure we're using our funding wisely. That's the hard part.
Sounds like the superintendent found the spoke her opinion.
It's one of many. It's one of many, because I don't know that this is a one-dimensional decision. I think whatever decision you gentlemen make, we must understand the tentacles associated, because there are little faces behind every one of these decisions. So I'm just asking that we proceed with caution. What I asked Ms. Day to do is exactly what she did tonight, and that was to illuminate, and I think she did a good job of kind of recapping for us how we got where we are and where we are. What she can't tell us is what to do about it. That she can't tell us. But I do think it is a healthy place for us to be, so that we're all on the same page with the money.
Dr. McLean, can you give us just an overall impression in terms of all of our schools?
Yes, sir.
Is there equity across the county? And if not, where would be a few places, don't go into great, few places where we are lacking equity? In other words, are the kids at Mary Potter having the same opportunity as the kids at Holly? Or wherever, whatever the middle school might be. And I just use that as one example. Are the high schools, do they have the same, because they're basically about the same size, I think, all three of them.
I will tell you what I've learned since I've been here. I think based on what we have, based on cuts, based on numbers, based on choice, because this county has all that
Sure.
choice, I think this district does the best it can to provide those equitable experiences. But if you're really to go in and look at the numbers, I don't know if you gentlemen recall, when we first started this study work, Dr. Winborn put a really interesting scenario up of if you had a school with, how many children was it?
250 versus 500.
Versus 500. And the many different things you can do, the more students you have under a roof. I would urge you to, go back and look at that, because that's very real. What we have to do in our HR and finance departments is play the numbers game. One, I've got to be able to afford to offer certain courses, that's the curricular side. Then I've got to be able to hire the right people to teach those courses, that's my HR side. And then I've got to be able to pay those people. So the three have to work in concert in order to afford students appropriate opportunities. Here's what we know: when you don't have as many students, you clearly don't have as many resources in that place.
Well, and Dr. McLean, I think one other thing that we need to look at is the lack of some of those resources, quote unquote, the need for teachers or vacancies that we might have. To the extent that we can reduce those vacancies, we would be better off.
And in addition to that, what that helps with is the reduction of class size. And that also goes back to an HR issue. When you have so many vacancies, or you've got teachers, the House Bill 90 is a real issue. We all got confronted with that last year. But we know that sort of elevated class size in grades 4 through 12.
Which is so ridiculous.
Which, that's a challenge. That is a challenge. So the challenges Ms. Day has presented are very real. They're challenges that we wanted to just put on the table, because we don't want to make, well, my main advice, I'll say to Mr. Smith, is I just don't want us to make any decision lightly. All of the, you don't have, I believe I read something in the paper this week where there are no good options. Every option has tentacles to it and will bring with it some tug and pull. There just aren't any really popular options, but there are some hard decisions that need to be made going into next year. Now, what you did earlier, well, just a few months ago with regard to web and web HLS, while a decision was made, it's a decision that doesn't financially impact this year, because that decision was made for when? 2021. So you haven't touched the 955 at all. That decision is not going to hit this year. That hole is in effect this school year. So we have to have the conversation around what do we do about the 955, 770 for this year, and we know it's going to mean next year, and the following year, and the following year. So what is it we're going to do about all those pieces? And some of those you don't have control over. When the state comes in with a cut, you can't control it, we just have to respond. Decreasing enrollment, we have to still fight as hard as we can. That's a controllable. I will own that all day. I want those babies back. I want us to offer things.
You know what's hurting us there too is that, so I think Oxford Prep is now adding another grade per year. And that is what kills you, because, you know, when you add a year, and kids are already there, and, you know, and that's what happens at Falls Lake. They've added another, and you can't fight that. Vance Charter has added high school.
And I'll tell you, as I sit in meetings, one thing that is very clear is that charter schools are here to stay. So what we have to do as a district is think about our money long-term. What can we afford to operate, and what can we not? And doing it with sensitivity, I believe, is the best way to go, because those are tough decisions. I'm sorry, I didn't mean
No,
to
that's
get you all
fine, that's fine.
off track.
Just kind of on that thing, I was just gonna mention that, I didn't say this earlier, that it's a cycle, just like you're just saying, it's a cycle. So that blue, what is now 955, it was a blue 514, as Dr. Houlihan pointed out. And then that red decreasing enrollment came, and it grew to the 955. So it's a cycle that happens with, as we have.
And then you throw in about 955, what percent increase do you think it will be next year if salary increases are just in a, 2% or whatever it might, I mean, it's gonna go up pretty much.
So, let me help me understand.
In other words, with all the personnel in the 955, and we get salary increases and health insurance, and social security and all that, it's not gonna be 955 next year.
Right, well, my larger concern about the 955 is additional decreased enrollment, and how will that add to it? I mean, I know that, costs will increase, and luckily the commissioners have funded those in the past couple of years, but my concern is if we lose additional students, then it's more positions that would be added to that 955.
And I guess, we're looking at this like it's static, like it's just for this year only, but it's not for this year only. We're gonna be back here kicking this ball around next year, having to address the same issues. So whatever our solution is, needs to be a long-term solution, not just a, let's do it now, or for this year only.
Well, it's almost, to go along with what you're saying, is there's really nothing we can do about the 955 this school year. It is what it is. We can't close a school, ship books back, or anything of that nature. So, I mean, that is what it is, and you're right. Now we're looking at what are we doing for the next school year.
And that's what we have with all these discussions and hearings and things that we originally are supposed to be having. And once they all come to a conclusion, and we can do the summations of it, then we can make a decision, correct? So that's why we're still doing the same thing tonight. Until we get all those things in place, because we don't. I understand what Dave's saying. I know why we have the cuts. Because, Mr. Mills, because we just couldn't get the money from the people we wanted to get it from. We might as well tell the truth about it. Each time we was doing cuts because of monies that we could not get. And I was going to be more upset because money was probably being held so they could be put out of places. And I say that as a whole, the school system is suffering right now because we have prioritized some things in the county over top of our children. I'll just go ahead and say that. But that's how we kept cutting. And we cut every year. We used to make a statement, we cut the bone. And the bone was cut. And you remember the main agenda was because they said it was too many people working here in this office. So that was the main thing that drove the cut, while we couldn't get money to fund what we needed. So instead of getting money to fund what we needed, people was telling us if you don't cut people, you're not gonna get money to do what you need to get. Now, anybody knows what I'm talking about, know I'm telling you. And they can't have the bad witness with that. With that said, I know we're still here, But I think we ought to have clarity on what has put us here as well. And I still have hope that maybe some other things can still come about. So we just won't get locked into a one facet thinking of that's the answer for our solution. There still may be other scenarios within these things that we're looking at that will bring part of that $900,000 down if it don't bring all of it down over the next year and years to come. That's why I asked the question on this day about the fund balance percentage, how it drops. It's been dropping every year by a percentage. I'd like to know what that is and the long-term methods of that, and to see the projected amount that we're told to maintain it at a safety level, correct? So I don't think we should just go into the gloom of doom. I know we got to do something, but let's do it in the way that we're going. Do all these things and then make the decision that's going to affect the whole county in every way, including equity, in more than just saying, I can give you opportunities because you're together. We got to look at the equity of our taxpayers, of the community as well, but what we're doing to them financially as well. That's what I said. We're still talking the same talk, and I don't want us to just lead ourselves in one way until we have all the facts and we've done all the things we're going to do, and then let's just make the decision.
Yes,
I would like to answer one question, and I know this is sort of putting you on the spot a little bit, Dr. McLean, but I guess for us to be able to have some sense of 1920, I would like to have some feedback from you as to what you might be proposing or what you think our district will need in order for you to move us forward. I mean, we need to start looking long-term if we're going to support whatever you say you need.
As soon as I know where you gentlemen are going, I will be able to give you what I think you'll be able to do. But right now, you can't afford enough things. You really can't afford to continue the way you're going. And so as soon as we know, I've got a feeling we're ready to rock and roll.
Well, let me respond to what you just said, and I think that's very, very important. And I appreciate you, in essence, saying that you will live within your means, is basically what I heard. As soon as we tell you, then you'll be able to tell us what we can afford. Well, I look at it that way, but I also like to look at it in the sense that if we're going to be that no-kidding #1 school district that students want to, attend and parents want their children to go to, what kind of programs do we need to be able to attract or draw or get those kids from public school back into public schools? So it's not just what can we barely do, what is it that we really need to do in order to reclaim those students?
Let me give you just a little example, Mr.
Okay.
Mims, because I don't want you to leave thinking we haven't thought. But I know you can't afford it. One of the things I believe parents who lead us are looking for are top-notch quality programs that